There is a reason why in golf technique, the swing plane is something that's spoken about so much. The reason is if you can get your club and your arms in a good plane, it literally feels like you get into a slot. And as you get into that slot, it's almost like nothing can go wrong. You can deliver that club into the ball and get that lovely solid strike that you are after. That's the topic of today's lesson. We're going to be looking at swing plane. Now, of course, there are many factors that can influence your ability to swing the club on plane, from grip, setup, posture, many different things. You mustn't underestimate those things. However, today I'm going to focus on one particular area that maybe doesn't get identified as much as I think it's worthwhile doing. We're going to look at that area today. If you can work on this, I think you're going to start to find you feel that you get the club and your arms on a much better plane. It will help you develop that compact swing that I speak about that's so important. And in turn, that's going to give you the solid strikes that we're after. Now, I'm a right-handed player. I'm going to be talking about my right arm and elbow in this particular lesson. Obviously, if you're left-handed, just reverse that. So that's the area we're going to look at here, because I believe if I'm going to give you a simple analogy as well to do that. That's probably the key part here. I'm going to try and give you something very simple to work on. If you've watched some of the intuitive golf videos, you'll know I sometimes like to refer to the golf swing as a circle. And what we're going to do here, we're going to use that right elbow in that concept here. You see, if this right elbow, for me as a right-handed player, if I can let that fold correctly and move correctly, it really influences how the hands, arms and wrists are going to work, and therefore the club. The other thing it does, by that right elbow working properly and folding properly, it allows that club to create that nice circle around my body. That in turn, by the elbow folding properly, that in turn keeps my body nice and centered during the swing. So in other words, I stay within my structure. I end up with that very compact swing. Compare that to that right elbow being stiff and locked and on top and not folding properly. You can see how it's starting to lift my shoulders up out of my structure. That can also cause me to move either to the side or upwards. Any of those movements outside of our structure would affect our ability to coordinate the swing and affect our ability to be consistent with our striking. So if we can learn in this particular lesson here, we can learn a different way of moving this right elbow, it will influence the wrist, the club, and the way you develop that golf swing that is nice and compact. So that's how we're going to do it. So let me explain the lesson, if you like, the concept, the focus that I'd love you to have. What I'm going to ask you to do is do some swings. And I'm going to ask you, first of all, in order to do this, I'm going to make one clear observation. Your right hand and elbow need to be in a certain place to allow that to happen. If you grip it in a way where your right hand is very much on top here, can you see what's happened to my elbow and my shoulder to that extent? Very difficult for that right arm to work properly. So for the purpose of this exercise, we need to let that right elbow sit down. That right elbow needs to be pointing down towards our hip a little bit more here. That probably means that your right hand will feel more to the side of the handle rather than on top. But either way, we need that right elbow to be sitting down here so we can see the inside of the arm here and the elbow is pointing down towards the hip. That's going to be crucial. That part here, I'll stay here actually for you to see that. What I want you to do then in your setup is imagine that we've almost put a pin through that elbow there, and we're going to hold that elbow still there. Now, of course, in reality, that won't actually happen. But what we want to do is to imagine that now becomes the center of our circle. And the club head now is going to make a circle, a small circle, and I'll explain why a small one, around that elbow. So let me first of all show you here. There. Can you see how that club now is actually making a small circle around that elbow, with the elbow staying pretty much in the center of that circle? There. Can you see what's happening to my wrists as well? They're working nicely. They're hinging and cocking. Okay, there. Now, why did I say a small circle? Because when your right arm and elbow is locked in this way, it tends to overextend the circle. It makes it actually bigger than it should be. So if that is an issue for you and you're looking to improve your swing plane, by actually focusing on that elbow being nice and centered and being the center of the circle, in comparison to what you're used to, it's going to feel a very small circle. Small in that sense is going to be compact, and compact is what we love. That's what's going to help you have those coordinated swings. That's going to lead to those better strikes. So that is the lesson. What you're going to do is take lots of practicing. You can do exactly as I've done it, by the way, there. Put your finger or your hand, few fingers just on the inside of your arm there where the elbow is, opposite the elbow. Imagine that that's going to stay still. It won't stay exactly still. Imagine it, keep that, and visualize that as the center of the circle. Let the club head create a small circle around that elbow position there. Practice that to get the feeling. again, it's going to feel probably quite effortless. It's going to feel quite small. That in itself is a challenge. Allow yourself to do it though. Set yourself up. Practice that a few times. Imagine that elbow. That's your focus. That's the center of the circle. Let the club head create a circle around that elbow, staying in the center there. Once you've done that a few times, just carry on. And you'll start to feel a very different swing. Now, the important thing from down the line here is you'll start to see, if I show you, just actually doing it with the one hand, you'll see how the club is very easily swinging on plane there. It's not difficult. It just naturally wants to do that. You see, the club is already in plane here. All that actually happens when we create the nice circular action, that club simply turns upside down from where it was. Just look, it goes from there to there. That's all it's doing. That means it starts in plane, it's still in plane. It starts in plane, it's still in plane. And what we're talking about today is a big contributor to that is how this elbow works. The concept, imagine that elbow is the center of the circle. Let the club head make a circle around that elbow. And if you do that, the elbow will fold properly, the wrist will start to work differently. You will end up with a much more compact swing here, and therefore it will work much more effectively on the way down. If you do that, I believe you'll end up with a much more consistent swing plane and arm plane. And as a result of that, you will feel like you're much more in the slot more often coming down. As a result of that, you're going to hit more solid strikes more often. I hope that's been useful. If it is, give us some feedback, thumbs up. Any questions about it, any observations, please put them in the comments section. We love to observe them and come back to you with our opinions on it as well. But thanks ever so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one.